Glad to have you with us this morning. Glad to be able to worship with you this morning. Brandon's right. Last week we started a new series here at Flagstone, and we're calling it Haunted. And that doesn't mean the scary things that we normally are scared of at Halloween time, the haunted houses and things like that. Although those might be the things that come to mind. But we're talking about being haunted by the things that we struggle with, and maybe some things that we've feel like we've gotten out of our lives in the past, and yet they continue to come back, and they continue to be an issue for us. It continues to be something that we have to struggle with and struggle through, and that's what we're talking about. Now, before we get too far into today's lesson, Brandon shared with you a couple of the scars that he has. I have a couple of them myself. I have a little scar on my hand. It used to be more prevalent than it is now, but it's still there from when I was in third grade. That was a long time ago. And I was in third grade, and we were playing kickball at recess, and we had first base really close to a chain link fence for some reason. And I kicked the ball, and I was running to first, and somebody threw the ball, and it hit my feet, which tripped me up, and I went forward into the fence, and there's just little rough places on a chain link fence, and one of them just scratched my hand real good, and I still got the scar from it. I still remember it. Still remember going headlong into that fence and being really mad at the person that threw the ball, but it's kickball. You got to roll with the punches, right? I have two more scars on the same hand. Something's wrong with my left hand, I guess. On this hand, I've got a scar right here on this finger and a scar on my thumb from one time when I was feeding our dog. I was in about the 6th grade maybe, and I was going to go with my older sister. She had a Saturday morning basketball practice, and I was going to go and shoot around at the gym while she was having practice, and somebody was giving us a ride, and so I was having to hurry, and the dog needed to be fed before we left, and we used canned dog food, and the way I used to do that was I'd get the electric can opener, and I'd open both ends of the can, and then I'd just push from one end because I hated canned dog food. And I'd push the metal lid from one side through the can, pushing the food out the other end. You understand what I'm saying? Except the problem was this time that the lid that I had pushed through stuck to the dog food. Well, I can't leave that there for the dog to chew on, right? So I'm going to get that dog food can lid off the dog food. And what happens? Slice both of these fingers trying to get that off of there. Yeah. It hurt really bad, and I still have the scars from it, okay? Think about scars that you have. Think about things times that you've hurt yourself. As a matter of fact, let's do this for a second. Take about 30 seconds. Just turn to people next to you. Don't get too graphic or too showy with the scars. Let's keep it G-rated, but share with somebody a scar that you have and share the story real quick of how you got it. On your mark, say go. Go right now. Okay. I just meant to share one scar, not your whole body full of them, all right? So, question for you, show of hands. How many of you have at least a scar on your body that is a result of something that you did? Wow, okay, nice. Now, how many of you, show of hands, have at least a scar on your body because of the actions of someone else? Someone threw the rock. You just happen to get hit, okay, a little bit fewer hands on that. All right. I want to make a distinction this morning. Last week, we talked about being haunted by our past mistakes. And if you weren't here for that, didn't get to hear it, I would encourage you to go to our website or go on our YouTube channel and look that up and hear some of the things we shared about some of the choices that we've made, the things from our past that we chose to do that had negative results, and those things still haunt us, the guilt and the remorse for those things. Today, I want to specifically talk about scars that are left because of the actions of somebody else. It wasn't my choice. It wasn't something that I intended to do or even did. It was something that happened to me. You understand the difference? I told you about the scars I have from my own actions. Actually, I guess the kickball scar was somebody else. But anyway, I do have some pretty big scars on my left knee from a knee surgery 20 years ago. Tore my ACL playing basketball. And you can sit there and go, well, you tore your leg and your muscle. That's on you. Well, when we were playing basketball, I was on fast break. I was dribbling down. I was getting ready to shoot a layup. And the gym floor that we were playing on was carpeted. This kind of carpet. And so when I was at the moment that I was jumping to shoot my layup, a guy was going to foul me from behind and not allow me to shoot. Typical basketball play. He just completely bear hugged me from behind. Well, he hit me at the same time that I was pushing off to jump into the air, and my shoe was dug into the carpet. And so while I was trying to go this way, he was hitting me this way, and my knee was like, can't do that, and tore the ligament in my knee. It's a very painful thing to experience, by the way. I'm crawling on the floor, trying to get away from the pain. I don't know where I was crawling to, but I was trying to get away from it. Wherever it was, I didn't want to be near it. And so I ended up having knee surgeries. And ACL replacement now is a much less evasive procedure than it was 20 years ago, by the way. I have big old scars from my knee surgery. But I wouldn't have had to have that knee surgery, I'm thinking, if he hadn't hit me. That's his fault. I was just going to shoot the layup. He's the one that ran into me. And if it hadn't been for him, I wouldn't have this scar. I'd probably be playing for the NBA right now is what I'm thinking. It's really all because of him. Thank you for your laughter. I really appreciate that. That feels good to the ego. All right. But I want to make the distinction that sometimes we have these scars because of what somebody else did. And maybe what they did wasn't even intentional, or maybe they had every intent in the world in the actions that they took. But whatever it did, it was hurtful, it was painful to me, and it left a scar. It left a hurt that's still there. And there's things that I try to do to deal with it and maybe move past it, and maybe do move past it sometimes, and yet, like we talked about being haunted, these scars come back to haunt me sometimes. These hurts that I've experienced in the past come back to haunt me again. And all of us, many of us in this room would have scars that we get because of the actions of other people. Somebody, maybe several people in this room, at some point in your lives were physically abused by someone. Maybe it was a parent that just got way too aggressive with their discipline. Maybe it was a parent or a family member that used to get severely intoxicated and take it out on you. I would imagine in our room with this many people, there's some people in this room who have dealt with sexual abuse. And it wasn't something that you wanted to be a part of or chose to be a part of. It was something that someone else was taking those actions against you. And it leaves scars. It leaves deep hurts. Some of you are victims of, for lack of a better term, emotional abuse. One thing by physically hit you, but the words that were used, the way you were berated by people, made fun of by people, left some deep-rooted scars. Many of you in this room have dealt with divorce. Maybe it was your divorce. Maybe you tried to make the best of the marriage that you could, and that person still chose to leave. And the hurt is still there. Maybe it was your family. Maybe you were a child and your parents got divorced, and you still wrestle with the guilt for that. Was there something that you should have done different? Was there anything that was your fault about that? And maybe in the process, the whole divorce process, sometimes adults just they don't make the best choices in that situation, and they use you as a bargaining chip against the other person, and they say things about your mother, your father when the other one's not around, and just make the whole situation worse, and it hurts, and it makes you hurt, and it leaves scars. Some of you in this room have dealt with the death of a parent, death of a close family member. It was too soon. It shouldn't have been their time, at least not from our perspective. And we pray for healing. We pray for things to get better, and it didn't happen. And we're angry at God, but we feel guilty about being angry, and we're frustrated, and we have these emotions, and we feel like we got to build, keep those pinned up and move past it, but the scars are there. And it may be from years ago, and the scars are still there. Maybe you've come through the adoption or foster care system in your past. And I want to say, there are a lot of success stories of people who were adopted by a loving family or were taken care of by a family that cared a lot about them until they got into a permanent home. And those are wonderful stories, and however we can help with that, we want to do that. But some of those stories don't have a happy ending. And there's the kids that come through those situations have feelings of abandonment that stay with them throughout their lives. They have a hard time letting themselves get close to people now because of the scars of feeling abandoned in the past. They have self-esteem issues. They wonder if they can ever measure up. Maybe there's abuse that they dealt with in those situations, in those homes that they were in. Let's be honest. There's people in this room who have scars because of church folks. People who wore the name of Jesus and yet didn't act a lot like Jesus. Maybe in a certain situation. There are some of us here that experience judgment worse than we would ever experience from people who don't claim to be Christians. We've experienced a lack of compassion, a lack of forgiveness. We've seen hypocrisy. We've seen people be critical and experience people being critical of us and watch them go do ungodly things somewhere else. And it hurts, and it causes us to not trust church people and not really want to be around Christians and around church and have a relationship with God. And folks, that's just a small list of some of the scars that we deal with just with the people in this room. Of hurts that we've experienced, of things that happen in our lives that are a result of someone else's actions, someone else's choices. I experienced the hurt because of them. I had to deal with the scars that they caused. And the problem is that these scars, they take a long time to heal, if they ever completely heal at all. These are the scars that can come back to haunt us. These are the scars that I want us to be thinking about this morning. The emotions attached to them, the feelings that they cause. Those things continue to come back and continue to be a struggle for me, continue to haunt me. And it's not that it's constant. It's not that 24 hours a day I'm thinking of all the pain that I've experienced in my life. But there are times, there are situations, there are things that happen, and those emotions come back. Those memories come back. The scars feel like fresh wounds again. And if you're in that situation this morning, if you are haunted by scars from your past, from other people's actions, you may be thinking, well, that's just part of life. That's just what we have to deal with. And I want to give you some hope this morning that maybe we can let our scars completely heal, where they don't come back to haunt us anymore. How do we do that? Let me give you some action steps really quickly. How do I keep these scars from other people's actions from continuing to be a problem for me? First thing I would challenge you to do is to not make the wound worse than it already is. You've been hurt. You've been wounded. Don't make it worse. Don't make the wound worse than what it is. And how do I do that? How do I make the wound worse? When I've been hurt by somebody else, when I have scars from somebody else's choices or somebody else's actions, I can have the tendency to make things worse. There's many of us, we can get into harmful choices ourselves because we're hurting over what was done to us. There's people that get into harmful addictions like alcohol and drug abuse and porn abuse and things like that because we're so hurt of something that happened to us by something that happened to us in the past. And some people that have been hurt by others end up hurting other people. Because I'm angry about what happened to me as a kid, I lash out at other people. Because I'm frustrated with what happened to me a few weeks ago or a few years ago, I turn that anger and that frustration on other people that don't deserve it. We fight. Some of us develop eating disorders because we've been made to feel so bad in the past about who we are and how we look. And we just continue to hurt ourselves even more. Some people turn to gossip and ridicule. I'm so upset about who I am. I'm so upset about the way that I was made to feel that I'm going to talk bad about somebody else so they feel as bad as I do. So at least maybe I'll feel better about myself. Does it sound familiar? This is what we turn to sometimes. We're wounded. We have a scar from the wound, and we make the wound worse. We dive into actions that hurt ourselves or hurt other people because we've been hurt. In Romans chapter 12 and verse 21, it's in the New Testament. The Apostle Paul says in Romans chapter 12, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Something bad, something evil may have happened to me, but I don't need to make it worse by doing more evil things. Paul says, if something bad happens, don't make it worse by continuing to do bad things. Overcome evil with what? Good. Make better choices. Choose to forgive. Choose to accept. Choose to deal with the issue and move past it. And there may be a reason for me to make some harmful choices, but that doesn't give me permission to make those harmful choices. Does that make sense? Because of what has been done to me, I may have all the reason in the world to make the wound worse. That doesn't necessarily give me permission to. That's not the best thing for me. If you've been wounded, if you have scars from actions that happened to you in the past because of somebody else, don't make things worse by doing worse things on top of that. Number 2, don't keep reopening the wound. Don't make it worse and don't keep reopening it. The scab, the scar is there for a reason. It's trying to heal. Don't keep making it worse. We have to tell kids all the time when they get a cut and they get a scrape and it starts to scab over, what do we say? Leave it alone. Don't pick at it. Don't touch it. Why? Because they'll keep picking at it and it won't ever heal. And we think, oh, that's just kids. They just don't know any better. We do that with our emotional and spiritual scars all the time. We keep picking at it. We keep revisiting the hurt. We keep revisiting those emotions and keep focusing on it, keep thinking about it, and we don't give ourselves the opportunity to heal. Those things keep haunting us because we won't choose to let it heal. David says in Psalms, in the Old Testament, Psalms chapter 38 and verse 5, as he is talking about his own choices and his own sins and things of his past that he's feeling guilty about, that he's feeling remorse over, and that he's trying to move past. And he says in verse 5, my wounds fester and are loathsome because of my sinful folly. Now what David says here is, I've made some hurtful, destructive choices. They've caused me pain. They've caused problems. And it was my own dumb decisions that caused me to do that. That caused me to experience the pain that I'm experiencing. And the wounds continue to what? They continue to fester. That's kind of a gross sounding thing. But he's saying the wounds keep getting worse. They won't heal because of me. And I think the principle applies to our scars trying to heal, to the things, the actions that were taken towards us in the past that we maybe have even no control over, and it caused a hurt, it caused a wound, and it won't heal because we keep focusing on it and revisiting it. And folks, that's not wise. That's folly. It's foolish. David says, I keep having problems with the same wounds because of my own decision to keep reopening the wound. Don't do that. It's foolish and unwise to keep allowing myself to be reminded over and over again of the hurt that I've experienced in the past, because it's never going to heal. Which brings me to the third action step. Let the wound heal. Let it heal. Now, if I can give you some action steps inside of an action step, how do we do that? That sounds great, preacher. Let the wound heal. Okay, well, how do I do that? How do I let it get better? If I'm not going to make things worse, okay, I understand. I'm going to try not to make things worse. Well, how do I allow things to get better? Let me give you, this is going to be real quick, so stick with me. First thing, seek healing. It's funny, I have this reputation. We have a camp session that I direct at Green Valley Bible Camp over in Rogers every summer. And I have a reputation, deservedly so. I deserve it. I'll just tell you ahead of time. I have a reputation of being the least compassionate adult chaperone in charge person at the camp. Kids get hurt, and I'm like, you'll be fine. Kids come to me crying, I'm like, you need to go to somebody else. I'm just, I know some of you are going, I'm never sending my kids to that camp session again. There's other adults that will take care of them. Don't worry. There's times when a hurt takes place, and I'm guilty of it myself, where I get hurt, and I think to myself, I'll be fine. And I'll just keep plowing through. And I'm making things worse because I'm not seeking healing. Whatever is on me that is hurt could be better, but I won't let it heal. Same thing applies to the scars we experience because of what people have done to us in the past. We need to seek healing. We need to want to heal. We need to want to get better. And that almost seems silly to say, but folks, that's the first step. When we have a wound, let's want that wound not to be there anymore. Let's want to experience healing. And maybe that's going to take some extra effort on our part. And maybe it's going to take some things that are uncomfortable for us. You may need to go to counseling. You may need to go to some kind of therapy, to some people who are trained in how to help you heal. But you need to do it. You may need to get into a support group, to get around other people who have the same wounds, the same hurts that you do, and have learned how to get better and learn how to work through those things. And you need to surround yourself with some of those people. You need to do that. You need to spend some time in prayer. You need to spend some time praying, God, please heal me of this. And I know that's a really churchy thing to say that you expect a preacher to say on Sunday mornings, but I believe in the power of prayer. I believe that it works. And I believe that we can sincerely come before God and say, God, please heal this wound. Please make this scar better. I believe if we do that with all sincerity and with all faith that He's going to answer, that He will answer. I think that we need to have friendships and accountability, people that we can vent to and go, this is still a problem for me. Can you help me? Or at least just be a sounding board so I can get some of this off of my chest, so that I can get some of this out and move past it. I think that we need to rely on the Holy Spirit. If we are a child of God, we have His Spirit living in us, and we need to rely on Him to empower us to move beyond whatever it is that hurt us. But folks, we have got to want to get better. We have got to want to heal. Jesus quotes the prophet Isaiah after one of his sermons when he's talking to his disciples in Matthew chapter 13. And he says, this people's heart has become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears. They have closed their eyes. Otherwise, they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. God's not going to heal us against our will. If we want to keep being haunted by our scars and we want to keep reopening the wound, we're free to do that. But sometimes the reason that we can't get past things that happened to us in our past is because we're not trying to. We're not seeking to. We're not asking God to. God, would you please heal me? Because He says, I will, if you want me to. We need to seek healing. We let the wound heal by forgiving the person who hurt us. If the wound that results from what someone else did is going to heal, then I have to forgive the person who did it. And I know that's easier said than done, but that's what we're called to do. There's a time when Jesus was talking with His disciples and they're asking Him questions. And in Matthew chapter 18, one of His apostles comes to Him and he says, Jesus, he says in verse 21, how many times should I forgive my brother when he sins against me? Up to 7 times? And you got to understand that the other religious teachers in Jesus' day said that the magic number was 3. That if you forgave somebody 3 times when they've done something mean to you, you're a pretty good person. That's all you're obligated to do. You forgave them 3 times, and if they do something else beyond that, that's on them. I'm not obligated to forgive them anymore. So when Peter asked Jesus this question, he says, Jesus, how many times? 7 times? Peter's going, that's pretty good, Jesus. That's more than twice what I'm supposed to. Right? 7 times. Forgiving my brother 7 times. Understand, by the way, in case you didn't know, his brother was another one of Jesus' disciples. So I'm sure Andrew, his brother, sitting over there going, hey. Anyway, that was a side note. Peter's going, 7 times? Is 7 times enough? It sounds pretty good. Jesus, what do you think? Look at Jesus' response in verse 22. I'm telling you, not 7 times, but 77 times. Or some of your translations say 70 times 7. So either 77 or 490, however you want to look at it. Is Jesus putting a magic number on how many times we're supposed to forgive? That's not what he's saying. Jesus is saying you need to forgive so much that you forgot how many times you've forgiven. The same person? Yes. Every time? Yes. What if it's the same person doing the same thing? Forgive them. And in the context of talking about scars and wounds, we forgive. Whatever he said that hurt so much, whatever she did that you still feel the pain from, you forgive it. And understand, it's not up to that person to get forgiveness. Because some of us say, well, if they ask, then I'll forgive them. But if they don't ask, then they don't really deserve my forgiveness. That's not what Jesus says here. You are called to forgive. Forgiveness is not about them coming and asking for it or them earning it. It's our choice to give it. It's not that you weren't mistreated. It's not that you weren't abused. It's not that you weren't hurt. It's not that there's not a scar that remains that still comes back to haunt you. It's the fact that you have the power, you have the ability, you have the opportunity to give grace and to forgive like Jesus Christ does. And that's how it starts to heal. You seek healing and you forgive the person who hurt you. And number 3, you let go of it. You let go of the hurt. I can't be healed from it. I can't move past it. And I can't be set free from it if I won't let go of it. And if I keep reminding myself of the hurt, and if I hold on to the anger and the resentment and the frustration and the depression because of the hurt that was done to me, it's not going to heal. God says through the prophet Isaiah in Isaiah 43 and verse 18, forget the former things. Don't dwell on the past. Don't live there. Don't live in the past. Don't live where the scars are. Don't live where the hurt is. Don't keep choosing to be haunted by those things. Let go of them. Move past them so you can be healed of them. And also, if we're going to let the wound heal, we need to use the scar from the wound to bless other people. And I don't just mean to just be nice to the person who wasn't nice to you. I mean, use the wound, use the scar in a way that blesses other people. I'm amazed every time that I see on Facebook or other social media outlets soldiers that come back from their tour of duty and they have scars, maybe even missing limbs because of the actions of someone else. Many of them, after they struggle through the hurt and the I can't even imagine the difficulty of the physical pain and the changes to their bodies because of the action of someone else, they use those scars to bless other people, to talk with other soldiers who are dealing with the same thing. Go, you can do this. Look how I've moved on. You can do this. To talk to people who are struggling in all sorts of different aspects of their lives, whether it's their jobs or whether it's school or whether it's family issues. Hey, there are wounds that happen, but we can move beyond it. They're using their scars or using their wounds to bless other people. And that's what we need to do as well. And I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know how that's going to happen, but you're going to need to find ways to use the actions in your past that were hurtful to bless somebody else. You see somebody else that's going through something that you went through. You walk up to them, you hug them, you share with them, you talk to them about how you've gotten past it, how you are now victorious instead of being torn down by what's happened to you. You share that with people. You bless other people in some way. Find a way to bless other people with your scars. You stop being haunted by them. Peter says in 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 9, don't repay evil with evil or insult with insult. On the contrary, repay evil with a blessing. Don't just focus on forgiving the person that hurt you. Use the scar to bless other people, to enrich the lives of other people. You may have experienced something bad, something painful, something deeply hurtful, but you can use that experience when you've been healed from it to bless other people with it. And that's going to help the scar heal even more. I need to wrap up this morning. But I can't stop without sharing one quick story with you from this weekend where two of my boys go to high school. It was homecoming this weekend. And at the homecoming football game on Friday, there was the homecoming court came out onto the field. They were announced they came out onto the field. And if you didn't know anything different, you would just say, well, there's these girls in lovely gowns and guys in tuxedos, and that's really nice. But there was one amazing story on that field. Because there's a young man that's a sophomore at the high school that this summer was in a horrible accident. His bike wrecked while he was riding on the sidewalk next to a really busy street, and he fell into the street and got hit by a bus and survived. And went through surgeries and is still going through therapy. And a few weeks ago was still in a wheelchair. And here he was on Friday night walking his escort, or being the escort, I guess, walking across the football field. And to people who don't know the stories, oh, that's nice. They look nice. To his family and to the people that know him, it's amazing. Because there are countless people that have been praying for him since the day it happened. Within hours of hearing about that accident, people were pouring their hearts out to God in prayer. And I share that with you because what I want you to understand is that his family has spent the bulk of their time sharing his story and telling people, look at what God has done for our boy. They're not focusing on the fact that the bike fell apart. They're not focusing on the fact that he, maybe should have leaned the other way when he was falling down. They're not focusing on the fact that the bus hit him. They're not focusing on the fact of all the pain that he went through and the surgeries and the therapy and all that. They're constantly saying, look at what God is doing. It was a painful thing. It was awful. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. But look what God has done as a result of it. That's what we need to do with our scars, folks. We need to let the scars, and he's going to have scars for the rest of his life from this incident. We need to let the scar remind us of the healing, not the wound. Do you see the difference? They're not focusing on the wreck. They're focusing on the God of healing. That's the story that they're telling. And that's what we need to do as well. In 1 Corinthians chapter 12, Paul is going through, actually chapters 11 and 12, Paul is going through a list of all the different horrible experiences that he has had as a missionary. And he talks about shipwrecks and being stoned to death and being beaten and all these different awful things that happened to him. And he gets into chapter 12 and he says, there's even issues that I asked God to not have to deal with anymore. And he said, no, there's still an issue for me. And you would think someone who's been stoned to death would probably have some scars, wouldn't you? And you'd think somebody that's been laid out and been whipped 39 times Would probably have some scars, wouldn't he? And Paul says this in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, beginning verse 9. I boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. And that's why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses. I delight in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. And I would even say that Paul would say, in the scars. I delight in them. Because when I'm at my weakest, that's when he's at his strongest. I know there's a lot of scars in this room today. Things from your past that are still haunting you. And I can't do anything about what happened. But we can start with where you are now. And if healing needs to take place, it can start today. We can't change the past, but my God can change your future. And if it needs to happen today, we can help make that happen. And if you have been not allowing these wounds to heal, today's the day to give them to God and to say, I'm done dealing with this. I'm done battling this. I'm done reopening this wound over and over again. I'm ready for it to heal, and I'm ready to move past it. And we will help. We will pray, and we will do whatever we can to help make that happen. We're going to stand together. We're going to sing a song together. And to make it easier for you while we're standing, you can come to the front and you can say, if you want to share, here's my scar. Here's what's hurting me and what I want to be healed from. And we will pray for you. We will pray and we will believe that God is already starting to move to make that happen. You don't have to be healed before you come to him. Come to him with the wound and let him heal you right now. While together we stand and sing.
Just as I am.